Julia, you just have to go to basically, where can I do it here? So Julia, if you click on, if you see in the top of your Teams meeting, yeah, Landon is good. If you go to the top of your Teams meeting, you'll see it looks like two little people icons, and it's called, it'll say show participants. If you click that, you should be able to see my name. It'll say Alicia Kitchen, and it says organizer. If you hover over my name, there will be three little dots that show up. You can click, I'll spotlight myself, I guess. You can click on my name there, those three little dots, and click pin. And if you pin someone, that means that they'll be the screen that you automatically see. So hopefully that helps, and that then you can automatically default to my face. Chris Pratt is dun, 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 dun. I don't know. Who is it? It's Liam. Okay. So I'm sure people are going to be joining still as we go. And that's fine. I might have to admit people from the lobby when you hear that little, like, I don't even know, I'm not even gonna try to mimic the sound. The sound it makes when people are waiting in the lobby. I might have to unshare my screen, not unshare my screen, but get out of the note for a minute to let them in. Because I don't think you guys have the ability to do that. Maybe you do. If you do and you can click it, cool. If not, I will do it. But let's continue on. First, before we get into the note, I'm going to show you guys. Actually, I should share my screen so that way you see what I'm talking about. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen, and you should be able to see our course D2L page. So I already showed you about how the daily schedule will be up here. We went through meeting one. We're going to finish our note, and then we also have to read our reading. So if you want to access the readings, that way you can follow along as I read it to you guys. It's right here, linked right here. And then I did see that Landon earlier said that the link for meeting 2 wasn't on D2L, so I did put it on here. So I'm going to try my best to remember to do that. But hopefully now that we've had both of these meetings, they should automatically be in your teams, and you should be able to just kind of go back and see it and then join it. But I did link it there. But I wanted to show you guys, if you go to the content page, specifically for, Vincent or anybody that missed the first meeting, if you go to the content page, you will see, our units are all here. We already did a call to love. We are on call to action. So our content for that will be here. It might look a little different to you guys just because I have the power to hide things from you. So you see that's all hidden, but everything we're doing today is right here. So I have our natural law and social justice note, which will load and be right here. The handout that you guys are currently working on, which is the justice scriptural links, is right here. And then our reading for today. That's okay, Claire. I'm just going over where to find things in the content section. So this is our reading that we're doing today. So when you come onto the content page, sorry, just let me minimize this stuff because it'll be in the way. You'll see here daily meeting video recordings. When you click on that, it tells you here that this is where you're going to be able to find all of our recorded daily meetings. So if you miss a meeting or you have to leave halfway through or something, you can then watch it after. So I'm going to do them, post them by date. So you can see, right, daily meeting number 1 and number 2. So once this one's done recording and we're done, I'll add it to here. But right now it'll just be the first one and then the Monday. So if you click on here, I've made it into YouTube videos. So you can quite literally just click on this and watch it. So I will post, you'll see this says daily meeting number 1. underneath it, once we're done this, we'll have daily meeting number 2. So they'll be under here in the content section for you guys to watch. So hopefully that is helpful for you. Okay, good. I'm glad. So let's go back to our note. Julia, hey Haley, that's okay. Haley, I was just showing everyone where to access the recorded videos. So like the daily meeting, the first meeting we did today has been recorded and it's already on D2L under the content page. So you'll be able to go back and watch it. Julia, can you let me know in the chat if you're able to see my screen now and it's bigger? Can everyone make sure that they can see the screen? It should be on the last slide that we were on before we ended meeting 1. I know Julia was having a hard time getting the screen to show what it's supposed to. And I'm no tech wizard by any means, but I tried this thing called Spotlight, so I hope that worked. But hopefully everybody can see the screen. Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right. Excuse me, guys. Let's continue on and hope the dog doesn't bark because he's been weirdly on edge and barking at every little sound. So fingers crossed. I wish we could. I'm just gonna show you him for a second so that way you can everyone can join in and see what I'm dealing with right now. So if you can see my face, this is what I'm dealing with. It's just on guard at all times. Yeah, what we did last week too is we had like we ended a meeting early one day and just had like a show and tell of our pets. And it was great. So maybe we can do that too. Okay, so you guys should already have this slide done. Because this is the one we finished with at the end of last meeting. So we'll continue on. So we were just talking about how justice is a virtue, right? It's a good habit. And also about how basically when we're working towards justice, we're trying to, we are naturally then respecting the natural law that God, established and put into us in our hearts and in our minds from the day you're born. Okay, so remember I told you guys that a lot of people get justice and charity confused. And they are very similar, but there is one major difference between the two. So I wanted to ask you guys first, like, do you think, well, I just gave you away that answer, that there's a difference between the two. And I'm telling you that there is. But what do you think the difference is? What do you think the difference would be between justice and charity? So you can type it in the chat and I'll read it out loud if you want. Or if you want to unmute and chime in, you can raise your hand. So I see someone's hand is raised. I don't know whose. I can just see the little hand icon. So whoever raised your hand, you can unmute your mic.
That was me. I think there is a difference because with justice, it's almost like a moral obligation. Whereas charity, it's like, oh, this person's kind of so I'll just donate and then we'll see what happens kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're definitely pretty well bang on. So when you think justice, yeah, sure. So when you think justice, think like the root of the problem. So picture a tree. So when you look at a tree, you're in a park, you're walking through, you see this, all these beautiful trees. You see lots of trees, and you can only see basically up until the ground. So the top part of the tree that you see, that will be the charity, right? So underneath are the roots, and that would be considered the justice. So it's a lot harder to get to. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more difficult to solve basically unjust issues. So Xavier says charity, you choose to give them money, and the law makes you give them money. So yes and no. You can still have a charitable sort of event lead to justice. So think about, like I said, justice being the roots of the issue. So it's like the biggest part of it. And then charity being, you know, on top, what we can see, what we can help kind of immediately. Come on now. Okay, so here's a little bit of a diagram to kind of see the difference between the two. So when it comes to charitable works will meet the basic needs and aid individuals. So for example, you can volunteer at a homeless shelter, tutor children, you can assist women who face a crisis pregnancy, participate in a community beautification programs like cleaning up your community. You can donate to food pantries and clothing closets, sponsor a refugee family, and raise money for an overseas development project. So for example, when I was in university, I had like a social justice sort of class that I had to take. And so we had to come up with like a social movement, kind of like something that we could do to promote social change. So we did a benefit concert. So we had, you know, we held auditions, and we had a bunch of different local bands, and then some bigger bands that we found like that were still like local, like Ontario based. But we held a benefit concert where the money raised at the event went towards, we paired up with Free the Children. They're an organization that does, Claire, yeah, I would write this down. Like, just, you don't have to write all the examples down, just so that way you can get an idea between the difference between the two. Did you have to write this one down? No, that one you didn't. This one you do. So we paired up with Free the Children. Like I said, they're an organization that works with with people to either build schools or provide school supplies for third world countries. Vincent, if only it was that easy. I see somebody's hand is up. If your hand is up, you can unmute. Unless, Landon, did you just forget to put your hand down? There you go. Okay. So we raised enough money to build a school. Obviously, we could not go to, it was in Kenya. We could not go to Kenya to do it, just given the timing. We were in school, but we did send our money raised to Free the Children, and then they were able to then use it to build a school in Kenya. So, for example, that's charity, because did us building a school, you know, solve all of the issues of education in that third world country? No. Just like volunteering at a homeless shelter. Would volunteering at a homeless shelter solve the issue of homelessness? No. But it does provide some immediate relief. Whereas social justice, they remove the root causes to improve structures. So for example, to expand access to affordable housing. So if a contractor purchases a section of land maybe and then builds a lot of affordable housing units, that is expanding the access to affordable housing. So that is helping to get to the root cause of an issue. You can work to improve the education system. So if you say maybe rewrite the curriculum and it ends up being like changing the education system, like that is tackling the root of the issue. You know, supporting environmental protection laws, participating in a living wage campaign, promoting peace, and advocating for international assistance. So these are all things that help to get to the root of the problem. So donating money, or like I said, I told you guys that I used to go to, obviously not this year or last year, but I used to go to Toronto every single year to do my Christmas shopping at some point in December, in order to, do my Christmas shopping with my best friend. And I said every time we go for dinner, there's always there's homeless people all over Toronto, but there was always this homeless person that would sit outside the restaurant that we would go to, which is now closed. But I would buy a meal at the end of our dinner, and I would bring it out like a meal to go and bring it out and give it to that homeless person. So did I solve the issue of hunger? No. But I did provide an immediate assistance to meet someone's basic needs. So I hope that makes sense for you. So you can see that like charitable works are kind of like a band-aid, right? It doesn't heal the cut, but it helps. It helps to keep it clean, you know what I mean? And it helps the cut to heal. So I really hope that makes sense. Do any of you guys have questions about that difference? We'll look into it a little bit more in detail in the next slide. But think like charity, yeah, like I said, it's like putting a band-aid on a cut, whereas justice would be to heal it. I'm loving all of these in the chat. Charity would be to give food to somebody one time. Social justice would be to provide affordable housing. All right, so if you're writing this by hand, hopefully you've had a minute. Like I said, you don't need to get all of these examples down in this list, just a couple, so that way you can see the difference. Excuse me. So charity is a social service. So for a scriptural reference, think about the Good Samaritan story that we read. Okay, so that gospel story, it doesn't attempt to basically solve the cause of highway robbery or highway banditry at that time. The Samaritan provided temporary and immediate relief. So obviously did not solve the issue, the fact that there likely will still be robbing and attempted murder on that, highway. However, the Samaritan did provide immediate relief and temporary relief to that person at that moment. So charity then, like this is a highway, charity includes private and immediate acts. It responds to immediate need. It proves, oh, that should definitely say provide. I don't know why my computer changed it, but it should say provides direct service, meaning food, clothing, or shelter. It requires repeated action and is directed at the effects of injustice. So for example, like I said, homeless shelters, food shelves, or like food banks, clothing drives, emergency services. So for example, you guys know my significant other is a police officer. He is who will be speaking with you guys on Wednesday for a virtual guest speaker. Many times, like he went to a call the other night where someone was overdosing. So he got there. When someone overdoses, they are basically dead at the point when he gets there. So they administer, I think it's called, I want to say it's Narcan. It's some sort of basically like adrenaline drug. So it's supposed to basically restart the heart. And so they administer this drug. It's for people who are, drug addicts or users. And so it basically brings them back to life. So that is an example of charity for emergency services. So obviously he, in that moment, saved that man or woman. However, did he solve their drug addiction? Did he, admit them to a rehab facility? No. So that is why it's charity. So it's providing an immediate relief. So obviously saving this person, but it doesn't get to the root of the cause. So is that likely to happen again? Yes. Yes, Landon, drugs are bad. No. Come here. You okay? Come sit down. Oh. Fine. He's a big boy. He is almost as tall as I am. So I'll give you a minute to keep writing this down if you're writing it by hand. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Oh, Landon, look at your dog. Is he old? He's got a gray face. He seems old. So cute. Oh, he's so old. I love fat dogs. All right, are we good to move on? Let's hope so. Okay, so justice, like I said, so we're charity thinking social service. Justice thinks social change. So a scriptural reference for that would be the Exodus story. So in that, Moses does not ask for food and medicine for the Jewish slave labor force. He challenges the institutional system. So he, the takeaway message of that story is to let my people go, right? So he's trying to make change for everyone rather than just providing immediate relief, which would be food and medicine. So justice includes public collective actions. Remember, collective, think multiple people working together. It responds to long-term need. It promotes social change in institutions. It resolves structural injustice and is directed at the root cause of social injustice. So like I said, think about the tree diagram and the root. So you're getting to the bottom of the problem and virtually solving it. So examples could be legislative advocacy, changing corporate policies or practices, congregation-based community organizing. So remember, like I said, taking a section of land and building houses that are going to be used for affordable housing for like low income households. That would be, tackling the root of the issue, the fact that there are not enough affordable housing areas, and then thus you're providing more. So tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Obviously, we're going to get into more detail on the types of justice, what basic needs are, what thrival needs and survival needs are. We're going to read about that today. We're going to get into more about justice and what that entails. And then your afternoon task tomorrow will be each of you are going to, we'll go over this again tomorrow, but each of you are going to, like I said, because we'll have our police officer guest speaker Wednesday morning in our meeting 1. So I want you guys to come up with at least 2 questions each to ask him. So think about what's going on in the world, right? Think about like the fact that, you know, all these white supremacists just stormed the Capitol in the States the other day. Like that's huge. You know, there's a lot of comparison going on right now about that, you know, that movement as well as the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot of comparison happening between the two. You want to think about justice, think about our community, think about also like what can you do in our community to promote social change? What would be, you know, an attainable goal for you guys as teenagers? So think about any questions basically that you would ever want to ask a police officer, and then maybe if we have time at the end of the meeting, he'll be able to tell you a couple cool stories. But think about, I just want you guys to start pondering while we're talking about social justice and we're talking about natural law, justice, charity, things like that. Just kind of get your brains working to figure out what questions you want to ask. No, Landon, but he might not stand for it. A big thing that you might want to think about and ask him his opinion on is also our justice system in Canada. So like I said, like he will obviously be able to give you more accurate information on it, but our justice system in Canada is not the best. Like someone might go to, you know, get found guilty of first-degree murder, and they may likely only serve 4 to 8 years in jail. If that. So our justice system is not the best. So you can think about that, maybe look up some stuff online and figure out what you might want to pick his brain about. Are we done with this slide? Are we good to move on? Hopefully. I'm getting a couple yeahs. All right. So what are the Catholic social teachings? So the Catholic social teachings, they're a rich treasure of wisdom about building a just society and living lives of holiness amidst the challenges of modern society. So basically, they're like a framework for how to, you know, have a just community or a just society. Oh, Haley, you still needed that slide? I can go back. Sorry, guys. I will give Haley and whoever else hasn't piped up yet another minute or two to jot this down. Haley, let me know as soon as you are good to go. Okay. So the Catholic, that's okay, Haley. The Catholic Church recognizes that we have 7 social teachings. And we are called to work respecting and implementing these teachings in our society. So you'll see what I mean when we get to what these 7 teachings are in our unit, because it would take a long time for us to focus on all 7. This unit, we're going to focus on 2 specifically that you're going to, you know, we'll be diving into more detail on, but you'll see what I mean. This list of 7 teachings and how we should work towards. You have to respect these things in order for our society to be just and fair. So remember, I was talking during meeting one a little bit about the difference between equity and equality. And equality is not always a good thing, right? So equality, obviously, everybody should have the right to vote. That should be something that is equal amongst everyone. Sorry, my dog's groaning. Everybody should have a right to vote. Everybody should have, freedom of speech. There's a lot of different rights that we all have that should be equal across the board. However, maybe when it comes to like taxes and the amount of taxes people are charged, that should not be equal, right? So you have to think about how much people make. So maybe somebody has a part-time job and they only make $25,000 a year versus someone that, owns a company and makes maybe upwards of $200,000 a year or more. Should they be taxed the same amount? No, that wouldn't be fair. It's not fair to expect someone who makes not even a quarter, possibly maybe an eighth, depending on how much they make, of what somebody else makes a year to pay the same amount of taxes. But it's also not fair then to expect someone who makes that much money to pay as little amount of taxes as someone who doesn't. So we have to think about it as what is fair and take everybody's situations into consideration. So these social teachings are basically a framework of things. Like, as long as we respect and we implement these teachings, our society should be a just one. However, that's not always the case. Hence why we have unjust, or social justice issues in the world. We always have and we always will, unfortunately. So give everyone that's writing it out by hand another minute to write down. That's okay, Julia. You maybe just had like an internet glitch. We had it one day last week where the power went out really randomly, like it flickered. I think it only happened with me and maybe somebody else in the chat or in the meeting that lives, I think, in the same kind of area. Yeah, it kicked everybody. It kicked me out of the meeting, but luckily, because I was still on my phone, I guess, I have the chat. I'm in the meeting twice basically because I'm in the chat on my phone. Yeah, and Cayuga, yeah. So I was in Hagersville, and so power went out just very briefly, and it booted, I think, anybody in Haldeman out of their Teams meetings. I do notice that sometimes the lights flicker a little bit in here, so I'm really hoping that it's not going to happen again. Yeah, the officer, he was an RCMP, I think RCMP officer in Calgary. Yeah, who was killed. You can always ask Jake about that on Wednesday as well, because he knows a little bit about that. It's very sad. All right, give me a thumbs up or a yes or something in the chat if we are good to move on. If you're writing it by hand. Okay, let's hope so. Moving on. All right, so see what I mean by the 7 social teachings of the church. So these are the things that we need to implement and respect for everyone in order to have a just society. So it should make sense, right? So human dignity, right? We talked about this last unit, I believe it was, when we talked about basically the second you're born, your life has value because you have human dignity, and nobody should be able to disrespect or take that dignity away from you. 2, being stewardship. 3, preferential option for the poor. So we are going to be focusing on in this unit human dignity, and number 3, the preferential option for the poor, because it's something that a lot of people kind of struggle with the idea of. 4, common good. We already talked about common good. You did that last unit. 5, the dignity of work and the rights of workers. So no one's going to ask you to do any work in your place of work or any job in your place of work that should, take away some of your human dignity. Number 6, our rights and responsibilities. And then number 7, our call to family, community, and participation. So like I said, these are the 7 social teachings of the church. And so you can see that just because they're the 7 social teachings of the church, they don't have, they're not strictly religious. Like, they're not religious things. Like, there are things that everybody has regardless of your beliefs. So like I said, if you don't believe in God, you can still respect these 7 social teachings in order to contribute to a just society. Like the video said, that basically being just is to be a good person. And so that's kind of what we're gearing towards, right? So as long as you can respect the dignity of all other humans, that will help contribute to a just society, right? When we oppress people and we look at people, and especially groups of people, as lesser than us for whatever reason, maybe they make less money, maybe like a lot of people that have their human dignity kind of stripped of them are people that we deem like lesser than us. Remember we talked about outcasts in class? So like homeless people, drug addicts, basically anybody that's in poverty. Unfortunately, we, like as a society, we oppress them, and it shouldn't be that way. So if we can work on respecting everybody's dignity regardless of their situation in life, then that will help us to have a more just society. So preferential option for the poor, we're going to get into more detail about, but it's something that people struggle with, because a lot of people have the idea that if you're poor, get a job. And it's a tough mentality to have. I understand why people have that, but it doesn't work that way. And a lot of people also have the it's a selfish mentality, but to think like, I work really hard for my money, so why should I help out these people just because they don't have a job? And again, I understand that. However, it ends up, it's just there may be other circumstances as to why they can't make money, why they can't provide for themselves. And if we're able to provide for ourselves in an abundance, then it is our duty to help those that can't. All right, does everybody have these 7 social teachings written down? Yeah, everybody's good? Okay, awesome. So like I said, you don't need to write this down. But in this unit, we're going to examine specifically human dignity and the preferential option for the poor in greater depth. So these 2 principles in particular, they can really help us to show love to God and to our neighbor. Remember, our neighbor being all humans, everybody in the world. So if you don't believe in God, or you're not, maybe you're questioning it, or you're not a practicing Catholic, that's totally fine. It's basically still the same. It's about how to show love to humans and help people out when they need it. All right, so human dignity. So the church calls us to remember the principle of human dignity. The church teaches that every life has dignity from the moment of conception until death. So remember, every life is valuable. We went over this last unit, that every single life has value. We talked about this in Unit 1 as well, and it should be respected at all times. Hence why the church and Catholicism, we are against abortion, right? So because from the moment of conception, your life has value, you have human dignity. Hence why with incarnation, God came to earth from the moment of conception to show that every step of life has value. So we're called to make an extra effort to respect the dignity of the poor, specifically because the poor people who are poor or in poverty, their dignity is very fragile, right? So because, like I said in the slide before, we are often very easy to oppress people that we deem lesser, right? So the poor are a group of people that are oppressed constantly. And so we need to make an effort to respect the dignity of the poor by helping them when they can't help themselves, right? So like I said, if you have an abundance of one thing that somebody who's poor has none of, it's our duty then to supplement that and to help them out. So I hope that makes sense. And I'll give you guys a minute to jot that down. Also, hopefully you guys are doing okay with your justice like scriptural links handout. A couple people have emailed me questions and I've tried to get back to you guys as quickly as possible. So hopefully that is going well. If you go to the Dropbox, you'll see that there is a spot now in the Dropbox to upload that document when you're done. Okay, is everybody good to move on? Also, just looking at the time, we may possibly go over a little bit in this second meeting, which is fine, but yeah, we'll make it work. If you're writing it by hand and you're finished this slide, just give me a yes or a thumbs up in the chat so I can know when to move on. Chris, after this meeting, you're not done for the day. You'll have your scriptural links handout that you guys will be working on. But after this call, this will be our last call, like Teams meeting for the day. But you'll still have work that you have to do. Okay. This video is a little bit long, so I'm gonna probably get you guys to watch it on your own time. So it is it's a bit corny because it's a paid actor / actress type scenario where there's a man that is pretending to be homeless, and then there's a group of teens. They're all paid actors who basically humiliate him in public. Basically, they belittle him. They try and make him bark for his money, for money, and they just are not respecting his dignity at all. And then it's to see the public's reactions to that, basically. And a lot of people come up and they get really mad at the teens and make them feel small for doing that to someone. And it just shows how everybody kind of has a natural instinct to stand up for people that are oppressing somebody else or belittling somebody's human dignity, especially when they're in situations or circumstances that are unfortunate, like homeless. So you guys can watch this on your own time. Like I don't want it to take up too much more of her time. So you can watch that after, but we'll continue on. Okay, so community. So human dignity can be realized and protected only in community. So a group of people basically have to protect and realize the dignity of its members. So in our teaching, the human person is not only sacred, but it's also social. So we are social beings. Right from day one, we are social. We are interacting constantly. Ryerson, you would just click on this link in the slide on this note is on D2L, and then on this slide you'll just click on that link. So how we organize our society, so with regards to economics, so jobs and politics, laws and policy, that directly affects human dignity and the capacity of individuals to grow in a community. So if we put a law in place, for example, that maybe we open up a high-end sort of grocery store in a small community, but the prices are extremely high. But because they have such good products, most people in that community are probably economically sound. So they probably make enough money that they can shop there. And then maybe the more affordable stores start closing because they can't compete with this big store. So that affects human dignity and how the people in that community can grow, because there will be a group of people that are being oppressed then from that community or within that community that can't afford to shop at that store. Right, so putting in a policy or something, you can see how it would affect individuals in a community to grow. So, like I said, that's it comes down to the equity versus equality thing again. We can't expect to put in a policy that everybody can abide by when not everybody can. Right, we can only do so much. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. So when we think about, like I said, again, about taxes, taxes is a good one to think because taxes are based on your income. So again, like if we put in a policy that from this point on, everybody has to pay taxes based on if you made say like the average, salary that people make. If you look at like in a community, we told of everybody's yearly salaries, and the average came to say 60,000 a year. If then we put in a policy that said, okay, so from this point on, everybody, no matter how much you make, you have to pay taxes based on that yearly income. So you have to pay taxes as if you made $60,000 a year to make it equal. There are going to be people in that community who make say 100,000 plus a year that are going to be like, oh, wait, sweet, no problem. That's going to be less than they had to pay before. However, there will be people who either don't make anything because maybe they don't have a job, or people who make way less, say $25,000, $30,000 a year, maybe even less than that. If you only work part-time, maybe you only make $15,000 a year. And then that would be, in an insurmountable amount of taxes for them to pay. Like they wouldn't be able to do it. So you can see if we organize our society and put that policy in place, that would directly affect individuals who make less money. It would not allow them to grow in the community because they just wouldn't be able to get on top of it. It's not fair for them. I hope that makes sense. Are we good? I see someone's hand is up. If your hand is up, you can unmute.
I'll forget what to say.
Okay, well, maybe it'll come back to you. If it'll come back to you, then you can let me know.
Oh yeah, what if I don't have a piece of paper beside me?
If you don't have paper beside you, and Jaden, and you were wanting to write this by hand, you can get this note on D2L on the home page after, as well as on the content page. So you can go back and you can either
Yeah, I'm
print
back
it.
looking at the notes instead.
Yeah, so you can print it if you want, or you can go back and look at it after.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that instead.
Okay.
It's just easier to get. All right.
Okay, is everybody good to move on from this slide? All right, I hope. Did anyone say no? Nobody said anything. Okay, so the other social teaching, like from the church that we are focusing on, is the preferential option for the poor. Now, a lot of people struggle with this idea. Again, like because we are just by nature kind of selfish creatures. So it is hard for us to struggle. I mean, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around this idea. So basically, Jesus tells us that solidarity with the poor is solidarity with God. So if you stand with the poor, you help them, you advocate for them, then basically you are doing that with God, because God has a special closeness or a special connection with the poor, which is what that is called, as preferential option for the poor. So from Matthew chapter 25, line 40, Jesus says, "As you did it to the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." So basically, because Jesus and God have a special connection or special closeness with the poor or impoverished people, because they have that extra need, right? There's basic needs that they're not getting, which then gives them a special closeness to God. So if you oppress the poor, or you belittle the poor, or you act on the poor to harm their human dignity, in turn, you are then doing that to God as well, right? So the rich don't share in this closeness with the poor, because if you are wealthy, I should say, then you don't know what it is to not have these basic needs. And maybe you have at one point, like I said, when I was growing up, my dad was really sick. My mom had left when I was young, very young. So we didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so a lot of our money and a lot of our time went into caring for my dad, who was ill. So I didn't grow up very wealthy at all. So now that I've worked really hard and I went to school, I had a ton of debt, but I worked really hard to get where I'm at now. And now that I am, I have a good job, I'm comfortable financially. I wouldn't say that I am wealthy by any means, maybe one day, but right now I'm comfortable. So I know what it's like to be, in that sort of poverty area. Like, I don't think it would have been, or realm, it wouldn't have been deemed like definite poverty. Like, there's poverty is like a scale, right? So there's poverty where people who are homeless, they have nothing. And then there's poverty, people who, maybe live paycheck to paycheck, would still be deemed kind of in poverty. So it's a scale basically, right? So if you came from very little money, or you've experienced that, then you would know this closeness that God shares with the poor, because you would understand what it is to not have those basic needs at some point in your life. So people who are wealthy, they can't empathize with that. They can't understand that. And so they don't share in that special closeness with the poor. So Xavier would say, what are you supposed to do? So there's lots of things, right, to advocate for the poor. So you can do just that, advocate for them, give them a voice when people don't take them seriously. You can donate, you can help wherever you possibly can. No, Landon, that does not. The fact that you have a phone tells me that it's not considered poverty. So this, like I said, this is a concept that a lot of people struggle with. Oh, awesome, Xavier. That's like perfect timing. Vincent. All right, I'll give you guys a minute to jot this down. And then we can continue on. I'm just going to see. Oh, yeah, there's. Oh, sorry. Another slide. All right, if you're writing it by hand, let me know in the chat if you are good to move on. Okay, awesome. Okay, so this one's a bit longer of a slide, and I apologize for that. So try to summarize where possible. So on the same topic, as followers of Christ, or if you don't believe in God, just as people in general, basically as a member of a society, we're challenged to make a fundamental option for the poor. So that basically means to speak for the voiceless, to defend the defenseless, to assess lifestyle policies and social institutions in terms of their impact on the poor. So if the poor, if they can't help themselves, if they're not going to be taken seriously, if they have no means of speaking up for themselves and advocating for themselves, that is our job. Basically, it's our challenge to do that for them. So this option for the poor does not mean to pit one group against another. So it's not supposed to be like, all right, we are one group that are advocating for the poor, and then if you don't do it, like, then you're bad. Like, and then it's not pitting, it's not dividing the community, but rather it's strengthening everyone by assisting those who are the most vulnerable. So just because there are people in poverty doesn't mean that they're not a member of your community. They're still a member. And so it's our job to kind of make them feel welcome and a part of the community. So we need to help them when we can. Okay, guys, let's keep the chat for questions. So that way, every time it goes off and I look at it, I get distracted because I'm trying to see if someone's asked a question, and then it's gifts. So let's keep that in mind. So as Christians, we are called to respond. I shouldn't even just say as Christians, as people. Basically, so as people in general, we are called to respond to the needs of all of our brothers and sisters, all of our neighbors, everybody in our community, but those with the greatest needs require the greatest response. So it's not like we're saying only advocate for the poor and nobody else. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that obviously we are supposed to help anybody if they need it, if they need help and you're able to do that, then help them no matter where they're at on the on the pay scale. But obviously people that have greater needs require a greater response. Landon. Does that make sense, guys? Do you guys have any questions about the preferential option for the poor concept? Like, I don't want you to think that when we say preferential option for the poor, that you're supposed to, solely help those people and not anybody else. That's not what we're talking about. We're not marginalizing anybody. We're not dividing a group within the community. We're not trying to pit anyone against each other, but rather you want to strengthen your whole community by helping those that need it. Xavier, like I said, the recordings will be on D2L under the content page. Okay, so are we good with this preferential option for the poor concept? Do we have any questions about it? Okay, so give everyone a minute still. To jot this down if you're writing it by hand, because this is a bit of a longer slide, and I apologize for that. Xavier, like, I know, Julia, sorry, the slide is a long one. If you take a picture of it, if you wanted to, like, take a picture of it and then you can get back to it after, that makes sense. Yeah, you can also have like if I'm sharing my screen here, I can show you guys. You can have like the Teams, so this would be like what you see basically. So you can have your Teams meeting open, like you can scroll it over to the side and then have your Teams meeting open at the same time as like a note. So you could like be looking at my screen and then also on the same time over here have Microsoft Word open and then typing the note out by hand if you'd rather do that instead of writing it by hand. That's also an option. Max, usually we finish at 1:15, but I wanted to get through this note, so it is taking a little bit longer. So I did say a little bit ago that we might go past our normal meeting time. Yeah, this is a bit of a longer note, so I apologize that it's taking a little while. Plus, we had some stuff to go over to show you kind of where things were located on D2L. That being said, what I'll probably do is our Grounds for Justice article that we were going to read together in this meeting, I will probably wait and save it for tomorrow morning. So after we're done this meeting, whatever time we finish, hopefully within the next 10 minutes or so, I will just give you guys the afternoon to work on your scriptural links justice handout, and then we'll worry about the Grounds for Justice reading tomorrow. Sound good? Okay. So is everybody done with this slide? Can we move on? Yeah, hopefully most people are done. I know, I apologize, guys. This is a long slide. I'm sorry. Okay. So, this is a quote from Father Dan Berrien. So about a preferential option for the poor. So he says, the poor show us who we are, and the prophets tell us who we could be. So we hide the poor and kill the prophets. So it's a pretty interesting quote to think about how, basically what we try to kind of, shade ourselves from and hide within our own communities. So Mother Teresa, she she is a saint, but she hopefully is someone that you're familiar with, that maybe you've learned about before. But she is a great role model for advocating for the poor and helping the poor. So what I'll do is I'll click on this link. We'll see how long the video is. I can't remember. Somebody's mic is on. If you want to turn that off. So we won't watch it all, but I will play this so you guys can get an idea of who Mother Teresa was and what she did for the poor, basically.
Catholic nun and missionary Mother Teresa was born on 26 August 1910 in Skopje, the current capital of the Republic of Macedonia. The following day, she was baptized as Agnes Gonza Boiagiu. Her parents, Nicola and Drefine Boiagiu, were of Albanian descent. Her father was an entrepreneur who worked as a construction contractor and a trader of medicines and other goods. In 1919, when Agnes was only 8 years old, her father suddenly fell ill and died. While the cause of his death remains unknown, many have speculated that political enemies poisoned him. Agnes attended a convent-run primary school and then a state-run secondary school. As a girl, she sang in the local Sacred Heart Choir and was often asked to sing solos. In 1928, an 18-year-old Agnes decided to become a nun and set off for Ireland to join the Sisters of Loreto in Dublin. It was there that she took the name Sister Mary Teresa. A year later, Sister Mary Teresa traveled to Darjeeling, India. In May 1931, she made her first profession of vows. Afterwards, she was sent to Calcutta, where she was assigned to teach at St. Mary's High School for Girls, a school run by Loreto sisters and dedicated to teaching girls from the city's poorest Bengali families. On 24th May 1937, she took her final profession of vows to a life of poverty, chastity, and obedience. As was the custom of Loreto nuns, she took on the title of Mother upon making her final vows and thus became known as Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa continued to teach at St. Mary's, and in 1944 she became the school's principal. Through her kindness, generosity, and unfailing commitment to her students' education, she sought to lead them to a life of devotion to Christ. Give me the strength to be ever the light of their lives, so that I may lead them at last to you, she wrote in a prayer. However, on 10th September 1946, Mother Teresa experienced a second calling, the call within a call, that would forever transform her life. She was riding a train from Calcutta to Himalayan foothills for a retreat when Christ spoke to her and told her to abandon teaching to work in the slums of Calcutta, aiding the city's poorest and sickest people. Since Mother Teresa had taken a vows of obedience, she could not leave her convent without official permission. After nearly a year and a half of lobbying, in January 1948, she finally received approval from the local archbishop. Donning the blue and white sari that she would always wear in public for the rest of her life, she left the Loreto convent and wandered out of the city. After 6 months of basic medical training, she voyaged for the first time into Calcutta's slums with no more specific goal than to aid the unwanted and the unloved. Mother Teresa quickly translated this somewhat vague calling into concrete actions to help the city's poor. In October 1950, she won recognition for New Congregation, the Missionaries of Charity, which she founded with only a handful of members, most of them former teachers or pupils from St. Mary's School. In 1971, Mother Teresa traveled to New York City to open her first American-based house for charity. And in summer of 1982, she secretly went to Beirut, where she crossed between Christian East Beirut and Muslim West Beirut to aid children of both faiths. In 1985, Mother Teresa returned to New York and spoke at the 40th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly. While there, she also opened Gift of Love, a home to care for those infected with HIV/AIDS. She was awarded the Jewel of India, the highest honor bestowed on Indian civilians, as well as the now defunct Soviet Union's gold medal of the Soviet Peace Committee. And in 1979, Mother Teresa won her highest honor when she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her work in bringing help to suffering humanity. After several years of deteriorating health, in which she suffered from heart, lung, and kidney problems, Mother Teresa died on 5th September 1997.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there just because you guys hopefully get the gist of the idea that basically Mother Teresa like devoted her life to helping the poor, right? She opened up all these different charity facilities to care for people and, show people that didn't have anybody in their lives, to show them love, especially the end of their lives when they were sick and suffering. So that's, she's basically one of our number one role models for when it comes to preferential option for the poor. So the last slide basically is I want you guys to kind of ponder and think about it, how you can respect human dignity and the poor in your community. So just kind of think to yourselves about what are some things that you can do in your community, whether it be your town, even think your school community. I know that we're not face to face, but as a school community, there's a lot of things that we do at Holy Trinity to help respect human dignity and the poor in our community. So one being, remember the giving tree. So you guys raised, we had that ticket, we had to buy a gift for a 14-year-old girl, and you guys raised over $100 in our class alone to do that. And that's huge. Like that is just a charitable act that you guys did in order to respect somebody's human dignity and the poor. So obviously somebody in our community, our school community, was unable to buy, purchase Christmas gifts for their children. And just because they're in that situation doesn't mean that they are any less a dignified human, and that they should definitely be able to take part in things like Christmas and have something to open on Christmas morning. And so you guys worked with your school community in order to make that happen. So that is something that you can think of, an example of what you guys do in your communities. So think about maybe your community, like your town, what you can do in order to help. Okay, so I apologize that went, 20 minutes longer than normal, our normal scheduled meeting. So like I said, we are going to, I'll update the D2L homepage. This reading that we were going to do together during this meeting, I will put it on pause until tomorrow morning. So we'll do it tomorrow morning in our first meeting. So don't stress about it. I just want you guys to focus on getting that justice in scriptural links handout done. And then you'll see that there is an option on Dropbox where you can click on it. When you go to the Dropbox on the homepage of our D2L page, click Dropbox and then click Justice Scriptural Links. You'll click that and then you can upload your Word document when you're done it. Don't forget that it will be due on tomorrow by, like I said, 11:59 p.m. So you'll have the whole day by the end of the day to get that uploaded. But that being said, I'm going to download our attendance here so I can take your attendance for the afternoon. And then you guys are good to go. So if you did miss the first meeting, like I said, it's under the content page, the recording. Same thing if you missed some of this. If you want a refresher, you can go back and watch that as well. I'll have it uploaded in the next like 20 minutes to half an hour because I have to wait for it to send me the recording before I can make it a YouTube video and then upload it. So as long as you guys don't have any more questions for me, then we are good to go. And I'll be available for questions for, the rest of the day. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning. All right. Goodbye. Have a good day. Bye, guys.